Hello and welcome to the Happy Little Futures podcast. As always, let's begin with a nice deep breath in and out. Fantastic. So today I thought I'd talk about something that's a little bit personal, makes me feel a bit vulnerable, but also I know a lot of people that are going through similar or have the same sort of feelings as I have done or do right now. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about ADHD and being overwhelmed as a parent and whether there's a difference, what the difference is. There's obviously a difference neurologically, but sort of symptom-wise, how we can then manage it and try and move forwards, sort of keeping our chins up and using similar techniques. So, first of all, I have been wondering for a while whether I might have ADHD. Symptoms got worse after having our third child. And the more I've learnt about it, because I've done a lot of research into it, more for work purposes, for people that I've been coaching and stuff like that, but also because our eldest might have it and sort of I need to support her. The more I've looked into it, the more I've gone, oh, actually, this sounds a lot like me. And yes, this happens with me and I struggle with X, Y, and Z. And for a while, I sort of fought against this thought that I might have ADHD. And I was like, well, it's just being a parent. It's just being an adult. However, when I discovered that symptoms normally show before you're 12, I was like, yeah, I had a lot of these symptoms before I was 12 too. So it's likely that I do have ADHD. I don't have a diagnosis. I have spoken to someone about possibly getting one, but at the moment I'm very much in a place where I've come to realise that I manage what could possibly be ADHD symptoms with mindfulness, and I have done for years. The big difference that I've found is since I've been more aware of what ADHD is and how it can manifest, I've changed slightly my mindset and been a bit more compassionate and a bit kinder towards myself. And I have managed my life a little bit more as if I have ADHD, which has reduced my fibromyalgia flare-ups, which has been quite an interesting side effect. So having that sort of like self-awareness and approaching myself with a bit more compassion and a bit more mindfully has actually helped a lot of the other symptoms that I've had for years and years and years. So the reason that I want to sort of mirror things with parenting overwhelm is because whilst there are a lot of symptoms of ADHD which mean that you can struggle to prioritise, you can struggle to manage your time, you can feel overwhelmed, stressed, anxious a lot quicker, and stuff like that. I do feel that as a parent, especially when you've got young kids and you're trying to manage, for example, myself, I have 3 children. At the moment, I have to manage one who is in year 2 and her timetable of life, her after school activities, the different things that she's got going on, her mental health, her possible ADHD, all of that sort of stuff. I try to manage all of that. I then have to manage my son who is in year 1, who I believe I've mentioned had an accident at the end of October. So for a lot of the past few months, we've sort of had that time consumed with trying to make sure his stitches aren't infected, helping his arm to heal, as well as managing his mental health because he struggled a lot after the accident, sort of with bad dreams and being quite anxious around anything, worrying that he might have an accident with everything and everything could be a severe consequence. And then managing my 3-year-old who has also and also my son has got after school activities, and then my 3-year-old as well, she has just started nursery sort of in October, just started sort of preschool nursery, and she is now doing her sort of going through her motions of trying to figure out where she fits, She enjoys going out with me in the mornings, and in the afternoons she finds it hard to transition into nursery, sort of gets upset and stuff like that. So again, it's sort of trying to manage her sort of like well-being and transitions, and making her feel safe and understand that I will still be there, I will still come and pick you up, but this is a time for you to enjoy with your friends. So that in itself is a lot. Add into the mix, trying to remember what day it is always fun. Trying to add in meals and making sure everyone's get the right nutrition. Not knowing what my husband's doing due to the nature of his work can be extremely difficult. So planning for the possible need for babysitters at short notice, the possibility that I might not need babysitters, having to make sure I've cancelled and changed things as needed. And other, like my work, his work, like just everything else. And trying to keep the house tidy, make sure there's not, like at the moment, if you walked into any room in our house, there are clothes everywhere, because the kids have grown out of clothes and they have got, like, we've been given new clothes very kindly for them to sort of start wearing. And it's just, there is a lot. And plus the wider family, sort of people getting older, ill, all of that sort of stuff. There is a lot as an adult, isn't there? And then you get a cold. So even if I stripped away the fact that, yes, I might have sort of an additional struggle of my executive function not being sort of entirely useful at times, as a parent, it is extremely overwhelming, and there is a lot to remember, and there are a lot of things that can make us not know which way to turn, that can make it so that at a moment's notice you might have to suddenly drop everything and do something else, that can make it so that you feel under pressure even when you're just sitting down trying to chill in the evenings. And it can be quite extreme. And in both instances, I feel personally, and I've spoken to people that think they might have ADHD, I've spoken to people that do, like, are diagnosed with ADHD, and people that don't have ADHD and are just overwhelmed parents. And in all instances, there's a few things that come up. So one of them is the fact that it's hard to make time for themselves and to rationalise that self-care when they've got so many other people to think about. Another is I can't meditate because my mind doesn't switch off. Especially with people with ADHD, a lot of them just immediately are like, I've got an ADHD brain, so I can't switch off. And it's like, I get that. I understand that because my mind is full. However, with parenting, again, you've got a lot on. Your mind can't switch off. And whether it's ADHD or parenting overwhelm, I have managed to find ways to overcome that, to support my mental health, to support my well-being. And so I sort of want to then talk, I'm going to move on a little bit, to the fact that in all of these situations, there are things that are suggested to us and things that we can do. But before I do, I just want to thank our podcast sponsor, Rowan Fox, who are a maker of sustainable clothing for people who love wildlife, kids and adults. And if you head to rowanfox.com or check out Rowan Fox on Facebook and Instagram, you can see their wide selection of wonderful clothing and other gifts, all hand designed by their wonderful Pamela. So, as I said, there are many things that can be a struggle when you're an adult, when you're a parent, and when you've got ADHD. And in many cases, if you're stressed, if you're anxious, I've had it recently, I've got problems with my neck, which causes migraines quite a lot, and many other things. In many of these instances, people will turn around to you, well, doctors and therapists and other people, and they'll go, have you tried mindfulness? Have you tried meditation? And it can be hard to get guidance on how to do that. When, like, for example, when I saw the physio about my neck, it was try doing some deep breathing and relaxation. I mean, for me personally, that's fine. I know how to do that. I do it regularly anyway. However, for some people, what does that mean? And it can be quite overwhelming to suddenly be shot down with this sort of like, you just need to breathe sort of mentality, and just do some mindfulness, download an app, do all of that. If you're learning a new skill, it can be very, very difficult to make the time for it, especially if it's something that you aren't necessarily interested in. I'll be honest, not everyone is interested in doing meditation and mindfulness. If it's something that you don't fully understand, and that in your mind, for example, I've spoken a lot about the fact that in many cases people have this preconceived idea that meditation is sitting down cross-legged, being silent, not thinking for a period of time. If you have that preconception, that's not necessarily going to thrill you if you're then told, oh, you just need to meditate. Like, just go and take some deep breaths and do some mindfulness. That's not necessarily going to thrill you, and you're not necessarily going to get the drive. I know for me, certainly, if I'm not interested, it's extremely difficult for me to find that motivation to get going on it and to learn more about it. So in those instances, it can be very, very difficult to get going. However, as I've mentioned before, when you're learning to meditate, when you're being more mindful, you can get a lot more sort of, what's the best phrase for this? There are a lot more side effects than you might imagine. So, for example, when I first started meditating and being mindful, I was doing it to try and control my anxiety. I'd been told it was a good idea. I'd got train journeys that I could sit on a train for 10 minutes and just sort of plug my earphones in and just close my eyes. And it was fine. I also had the opportunity, if I was working from home, to go, well, normally I would be sitting on a train doing this, so I'm just going to do this now in my own time before I get going with work. It was easier for me to fit it in and learn. And it did help my anxiety, but I didn't really understand what was helping my anxiety, shall we say. So I couldn't quite pinpoint it. Over the years, I've come to realise that through practicing meditation, through practicing mindfulness, I have slowly learned to bring my attention to the present moment and be more involved in the present moment without judgment if my mind has begun to wander and my anxiety has started to creep up. I've also noticed that over time I've become more self-aware of how I feel in my body when I'm starting to get anxious, where my thoughts are leading if I'm getting anxious or stressed, for example. And in some instances, recently, for example, I've noticed that not only am I feeling the stress and anxiety of my own feelings, but I'm taking on the feelings of others. I'm really living in a very personal way and very sort of like empathetic way that I don't necessarily need to feel. I'm living their perspective of a situation. And things like that, whilst not necessarily a bad thing, can make life a lot more distressing than maybe it needs to be. And it can feed into further anxiety that I've got. I know I've spoken in the past about sort of mortality, anxiety and stuff like that with like around my children, and things like that really feed into that for me. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. So by practicing mindfulness and meditation, I have learnt to become more aware of what thoughts are going through my head and where they are leading. I've also started to learn ways of managing my thoughts. So whilst I can struggle to prioritise at times, I can make a list and I can sort of notice it, and I'll journal and I'll do a brain dump page in my journal, which I've just got loads of random words. I'll sit there for about 2 minutes and I'll fill a whole page with just random words and things like that are coming up and things that I've got to do or things that I'm thinking of. And it can be quite therapeutic to see it on paper and just go, okay, it's all there. It doesn't need to be in my head. If I want to remember it now, it's on that piece of paper, which unfortunately is what I also do with important things. I put them on a piece of paper and then I forget about them, but but that's fine. So by practicing mindfulness and meditation, it can make us more aware, it can make us more compassionate towards ourselves, because we understand what is driving these feelings and thoughts that we are having. So if we are feeling particularly anxious or stressed, it doesn't make it easier. Well, it makes it easier, but it doesn't make it easy, if that makes sense. So it can make it easier to go, this is what I'm feeling. This is why I'm feeling it. How do I now want to change this situation? So, for example, last week, the reason that there wasn't a podcast last week is because I was really holding on to a lot of feelings, sort of deeper empathy for other people in situations where I also have my own feelings. And I was holding on to them so much that actually it was consuming me, and I was so mixed up. And so whilst I needed to do a lot more work than I did, I was very aware that if I was working employed at that point, I would have gone to the doctors and I would have signed off sick. And so whilst I still did work, because I'm self-employed and you have to, I also made sure that, I'm lucky enough that at the moment, my daughter, my youngest, goes to the nursery every afternoon of the week. But that gives me the time on my own at home, which more often than not I'm working in. But it gave me the opportunity to sit there and go, actually, even if I do an hour's work, I just need to lie under a blanket and just be in a dark room and not have anything else going on around me. Just have no sort of other sensory situations happening. I just need to be me for a little bit, whatever that means. And one day I think it meant that I had a bath, but more often than not it meant that I just went and lay in a dark room. I'm extremely tired at the moment, and I just went and lay in the dark room. The one day I put on a bit of sort of nice meditation sounds on Insight Timer, on the timer, which I know I've mentioned to you in the past. Another day I put that on and was just like, no, even that's too much. I just need to be in silence, which if you know me, is very unusual. But because I have that awareness, and I have that awareness to sort of detangle things and go, actually, this is what's happening. And I have the compassion for myself to sort of go, whilst it's hard, you do need to take a bit of time. It means that like this week, for example, I'm feeling in a much better place. I'm able to do a lot more. I decorated our bedroom at the weekend and sort of said to my husband, look, the garden's driving you mad. Our bedroom's driving me mad. The kids are happy and need a more chilled day anyway. I've booked a tip trip for you to go do the garden so that you feel less anxious. And I'm going to do the bedroom so that I feel less anxious. And so whilst it was, for him and I, that is a very convoluted form of self-care. It was very much a form of self-care for us to turn around and go, this is what we need of our space, of our area, and this is what will help us both to feel calmer in these situations. So we will sort this, and it's okay that the kids have a bit of time to be themselves, do the activities that they want to do, and just bond. And we don't have to jump at every opportunity to go and have a whole day out and do things like that. And it was extremely beneficial for us. I feel a lot better. I mean, the bedroom is only half decorated and there is still a lot more to do. But I've done the hard part. I've eaten the frog, as many call it. And now the rest of it will be easier to do. So my point being, whilst I might have an ADHD brain, I might not have an ADHD brain and just have an overwhelmed parenting brain. And meditation and mindfulness can be very difficult in those situations with the amount of thoughts that you have going on, the amount of things in your mind that you are thinking, that you are feeling, that you are getting drawn to attention-wise because you don't want to forget them. Meditation and mindfulness can help you to unwind all those thoughts and find the focus in a bit of a cloudy situation, shall we say. So another thing that I meant to mention actually, and I'll mention now, is regardless of whether you're a parent, you have ADHD, or you're just a normal adult off on their on their normal day-to-day lives, actually we as humans, we have between sort of 50 and 70,000 thoughts at least a day. And so even if you are sort of have a minimal amount of responsibility or things that you need to do, it is normal for your mind to wander. It is normal for you to be worrying about all the different things that you've got to do. It is normal for you to have a lot on your mind and find it hard to just switch off to it in meditation. And as I've said before, sort of meditation is the practice of being mindful, and you wouldn't expect to walk into a concert and just perform a concerto. You wouldn't expect to just one day go, I'm going to run a marathon today, and run a marathon. You wouldn't expect to go into a gym for the first time ever and bench press 200 kilograms. You would practice and you would work up to that. And that is what meditation is. And whilst it can be a case of going in and having all these thoughts and sitting there and on some days getting frustrated with yourself, actually the practice is to bring your attention back to your breath, to your body, to an anchor, to that present moment, and help yourself in some instances, depending on your intention, as I spoke about last time, help yourself to transform where you're at, move from feeling stressed to feeling calm, let go of those thoughts on purpose, give yourself a mantra or an affirmation, I am calm, or I give myself permission to let go, or I can let go, things like that. Work with that to help yourself just find a moment of peace. So I expect this is something that I will probably talk about more in the future, because it's something that I'm quite passionate about, is the fact that, as I said last week or the week before, anyone can meditate. Anyone can meditate. It's just that for some people, that looks different to the way that other people do it. And for some people, it will be that, like I started off doing, you go and you can factor in that 10 minutes every single day to your day to help you to practice meditation and then be more mindful. For others, like myself nowadays, it's not so possible. It might be that you do micro meditations throughout the day. You spend that moment, once you've just poured the water onto your coffee in the morning, you take that moment to smell it. And every single morning you smell your coffee and really taste it with that first sip. No matter what's going on around you, you just smell that coffee and you taste it, and you practice being more mindful in that moment. And the more you do that, the more easy it will become to do it throughout your day with other activities. You might make another coffee later on in the day, and even if you don't drink all of it and it goes freezing cold, smell it in that moment and just sort of really be drawn into that moment. Be mindful of your senses, of your body in that moment. So it might be that it's those little things that actually can give you a bit more of a mindful approach to your day. And in doing those things more regularly, you are increasing that awareness of your body, of your senses, that self-awareness, and that awareness that you've not been present in the moments leading up to it and things like that. And that awareness that you deserve that moment, even if it's just a second, to just find a little bit of peace and have a bit of self-compassion, allowing your mind and body to rest and just let go of those thoughts. And things like that simplify the way that we can use meditation and mindfulness. They simplify when you go into that doctor's surgery, that physio, that whatever it is, and they go, do some deep breathing and relaxation. And you go, I don't even know where to start. I haven't got the time. I don't know what they're going on about. I can't download Headspace or whatever it is, Insight Timer. I can't download that right now. You then sit there and go, okay, I might not be able to do that, but every morning when I make my coffee, I can just be present with my coffee for a second. I can just smell that coffee as it rises. If a child comes up to me, I'll get them to stand next to me and see if they can smell that coffee as I pour the water onto it. And if they start going, ugh, I don't like the smell of coffee, you might find actually that you find joy in that moment that you wouldn't have normally found, because you'd have been going, just give me a moment, just let me pour my coffee. Or it's hot, just be careful, please stop doing that. Like, you would just have taken a moment for yourself, involved your child, and by doing so then provided that space for you both to connect and be present. So I am going to talk probably more about this over the next few months, weeks, depending on what happens. But more than anything, I just wanted to raise that awareness that whether you have ADHD, whether you're an overwhelmed parent, in many cases the symptoms can be the same. You can find ways to support your mental health through mindfulness, through meditation. And there are ways in which that can then support you throughout the day, help you to find other ways of managing your otherwise lacking executive function, if you feel that way, of talking to yourself kinder, of getting through the day without that sort of pressure and stress, and giving yourself permission in moments that you normally wouldn't have given yourself permission to just feel, to just stop. And I think another big thing that I'm sure I've said in the past, and again I will probably talk about in the future, another big thing is the fact that in all of these situations, I'm not saying that you're not allowed to feel stressed. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to feel anxious. That's what's sort of evolutionary wise has helped us as humans to continue to exist, is that amygdala, that anxiety, that sort of stress response. However, just because you're allowed to feel that way, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hold on to that in a moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to feel that way. So a bit of food for thought for you there this week. And I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in comments, drop me a message if you'd like to have a further chat about how I could help in this situation, help you. If some of this has resonated with you, then please feel free to do so. You can email me at happylittlefutures@gmail.com or info@happylittlefutures.co.uk. And you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, any of the main social media sites, and drop me a message there. So I'd love to hear from you. And as always, before we go, we're going to take a nice deep breath in and out. And you go on and have a fantastic day.